I noticed after Mom died that I still had some healing to do. I just had some healing to do. And one night, so a friend of mine had asked me to write a book, right? And I'm like, okay, this is what started the whole recording, like I'm doing now, recording processes. I said, well, I can dictate it. And she said, well, I can help transcribe everything if you dictate it. Well, that put me on a journey. And I said, well, maybe I can devote 30 minutes a day to it. So that night I started recording just my life, right? And I was intending on doing it for 30 minutes, but 4 hours into it, I was on a roller coaster of emotion, and I was talking about just the trauma, some stuff I've been through. So I finally put the recorder down, and I can't go to sleep, and I'm just like raring to go. How do I shut my mind down? Well, I decided to go take a drive because sometimes that helps. Well, lo and behold, I get in my car and I end up in Biloxi, 2.5 hours away, out at the family cemetery. And, whenever I was 19 and my family pretty much disowned me, I was actually my mom's youngest sister, my Aunt Judy. I was like her favorite. She always said I was the daughter she didn't have, and she just disowned me. I was the executor of her will. She took me off the will, just turned her back on me. Well, she died a few years back, and so everybody's buried at the family cemetery, right? So I show up at the family cemetery. I just go at 3:00 in the morning. I drive to Biloxi. That was not my intent, but I ended up there. I get out, and it's out in the country. So if you go to, it's Antioch Cemetery. If you go from Baton Rouge to Biloxi, pass up Biloxi, take the Ocean Springs exit, and you go left, that's not towards the beach. It's the opposite. It's out like 10 miles out there, maybe not quite 10 miles, out in the country. So I show up. Nobody's there. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I cuss everybody out. The most disrespectful thing you can do in a cemetery. I'm cussing them all out. I'm cussing my aunt for being so mean, for hurting me. I'm cussing my grandmother for saying what she said whenever I was younger. The only one I didn't cuss out was my grandpa. I'm cussing them all out. I told my mom, get your ass out from 6 feet under and come up here and fix this. Then I go over and I see some lady I don't know, Miss Margaret, something, I didn't know her. And she had these really pretty stones and flowers. I took one of her flowers and one of her stones. I said, can I borrow this? I brought it over, put it on my mom's grave. Then there were some flowers hanging over the fence, hanging over my Aunt Judy's grave. And I pushed the flowers back over the fence like, you don't deserve these flowers. Like, I was cussing. Why did you people abandon me? I was like the greatest kid. I was smart. I was quiet. I was good. I was loving. I was tenderhearted. And you walked out on me. You pulled your love from me. Like, I didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. I didn't do anything, nothing that justified what you did to me. I didn't do anything that justified the pain you caused me. And I cussed at all of them. And then I didn't even care. The crazy part is I knew the whole time I was being held. They didn't care either. It was like there was this energy that needed to move, and they didn't care I was cussing and screaming. They just held me. And for some reason, I took 3 pictures of the sky right before I left. And now I'm exhausted and I'm worn out and I've been crying. And I go to leave and I stop at the little store up on the corner before getting on the interstate, and I buy a huge bottle of water. I wasn't even thirsty, but I buy this massive bottle of water, and I drink just about all of it on my way home. And I'm telling my spirit guys, just get me home. I'm exhausted. I just want to go to bed. And when I walked in the door, I barely made it to the bathroom. I projectile vomited that water. I vomited so hard that I had tears. Like I had little tears in my throat. And I vomited probably 5 times. And what I realized was, this is what I needed. I needed to move the energy. So all these years, I thought, okay, I'd forgiven them, which I have. I forgave them, but I never got rid of the energy that was in my body. And I vomited so hard. And then I felt like so exhausted, I don't even remember going to sleep. I just remember waking up realizing, oh my gosh, I feel so much lighter. I feel almost to the point of this healed state. Lighter is the easiest way to say it. And I realized all of that vomiting and all, I intuitively stopping and getting the water was needed. I hadn't eaten, so I didn't have anything in my stomach. And so I didn't have anything to vomit. And so I needed the water because that's what helped me vomit and remove this energy from me. And then, of course, I'm like, I'm sorry for cussing all y'all out. But I looked back at my pictures that I took, and guess what is in the sky of up above my mom's grave, and fives, or I think it was 1-5, a 5, which is one of her signs. And I found hearts, and that's one of her other signs. And I just cried. I was like, that was her way of saying it's okay. You know, I even left when I pulled out of the cemetery. I had my windows down. I had Guns N' Roses blaring. Hadn't listened to them in years. I didn't care. But truth be told, I do care. It's not a matter of caring. It was pain. It was just the pain surfacing, and I didn't know how else to get it out. And all of it happened. None of it was planned, but it was all so necessary. And I just, I don't regret any of it. I really don't, because I didn't do anything. I wasn't doing anything to be hurtful. I was doing things because I was hurt. But I did. I found a 5 and hearts in those pictures, and I was like, I just told me everything's okay. And everything's okay. And I started feeling better. Things just seemed to feel like they were healing. The one thing, though, that I kept dealing with and have been dealing with for a while was fatigue. So I thought things were getting better, right? Well, you know how my life is. Every time something gets better, I get hit with something else. And lo and behold, the fatigue started getting worse and worse and worse. And I was having to reschedule people more than once, it's a horrible feeling. I don't like rescheduling people. I always trust timing, but at the same time, I'm human, and I know if somebody takes off work so they can have an appointment with me, it's not a good feeling to have to reschedule them. But I can't work, and I can't channel, and I can't do readings when I'm feeling fatigue or sick. And, and I didn't even go to, I'm going to actually go back, because the fatigue, had been a challenge for a while. In 2017, I had to have a stent placed because I had what's called a PCNL procedure. I had a huge kidney stone. I didn't have like regular kidney stone. I had the kind that dogs get, but it was large, and they had to go break it up in a bunch of pieces and remove it. And they had to put a stent in. Well, I had plans to go to Destin that weekend, and I went with my friends, and I was staying cool and staying in the shade and drinking water and hydrating. And next thing you know, that was one day. And the next day, all my friends, they had booked a dolphin excursion. I think is when you go to one of the islands out there and you see the dolphins in the wild, of course. And I didn't go. I felt too sick. When they got back, one of my friends is a nurse, and she kept feeling like her deceased dad was giving her a message, like, they got to do something, because I kept telling them, no, I'll be okay. So they took me to the urgent care clinic in Destin, and then I got transferred by ambulance to Fort Walton Beach Hospital because I was in septic shock. I was dying. I knew I was dying. I felt it. And that night, so the next day, everybody was leaving and to go home. So they had to go back to the condo and pack and all. And I told them I'll be okay. Well, so I was staying in the room by myself, and the tech kept coming in, checking my blood pressure. And it was like, it went from 70 down to like 40 over 22, something like that. I was dying. And the next morning, and she kept checking one arm and then she'd check the other, and it's low every time, but she didn't do anything about it because they all said, you shouldn't be talking if your blood pressure's this low. Well, obviously I was. But the next morning, the house manager comes in, and she's like, she took my blood pressure herself. And she said, then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. She's making phone calls, and they're basically getting me to ICU. And she's like, has it been like this all night? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she's just panicking because I should have been in ICU already. So they ended up moving me to ICU. Now, y'all, before this happened, about a week before it happened, I told these friends of mine, y'all, I'm at an exit point, meaning my death could happen coming up soon. And so I knew it. I felt it. So I got moved to ICU. That was pretty rough. And then I don't even know how long I was in the hospital. They were trying to decide if they were going to airlift me back to Baton Rouge or, keep me there, stabilize me. They're just trying to figure things out. Well, they decided they're going to have to do, what's it called? A VAS cath? Was it a VAS cath they did? Anyway, they're going to have to insert something in my arm. Why is my chemo messing my brain up? Which I'll explain that later. But, a PICC line is what they were doing. So they bring me into this procedure room, and as they're wheeling me down the hall, I'm panicking. I know this is it. This is my exit point. I felt it. This is it. I go in, they put me on this table. They have all these cameras and stuff. And this doctor walks in, and he picks up the scope in one hand, and he had something else in the other. And he just dropped them on the floor, and he walked out. And all the nurses were like, whoa, we are so sorry. But I said, no, it's okay, because I knew that was my exit point. I felt it. And right as I laid on the table, I saw a full apparition of Jesus at the end of the table. And I just knew, nope, it's like he just said, I've got this. And he smiled, and that was it. When the doctor dropped that scope and all, I knew that was divine intervention, because if he would have done this PICC line, he would have probably killed me, not on purpose, but hit the brachial artery, nicked it, bled out, cut it, something. And so all the nurses are apologizing, and I'm like, no, it's okay. Everything happens how it should. And I kept reassuring them, because they were like, he's done thousands of these. They were embarrassed. And I said, no, I just trust. Like, this is happening the way it's supposed to. And then the other doctor comes in like 20 minutes later, and everything went fine. And I bypassed that exit point. I knew that's when it was going to happen. I had been telling my friends I had one upcoming, and when that happened, and I was being wheeled down the hall, I knew this is it. I could die. And then when he dropped that stuff, I'm like, whoa, that was so freaky. I'll never forget that. And then the other doctor did it successfully. I got shipped home and stayed on IV antibiotics for weeks and weeks. And that was brutal. I'll go to the next recording.